Hello, good afternoon everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join today's webinar with Diligent, an introduction to board portals, make 2017 the year your board goes digital. My name is Stephanie Wong, and I'm the marketing lead for Asia here at Diligent. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Franklin Chen, Regional Sales Director for Asia, and Pooja Mathur, Country Manager for India. We are glad you could all join the session, and we hope you find it beneficial. Before we get started today, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar will be 25 to 30 minutes long. It will be recorded, and a replay will be sent out to all registrants after this session. Please feel free to share the replay with your colleagues, directors, and ask your questions at any time by utilizing the questions pane in the GoToWebinar panel. We will try to answer most of these questions at the end of our session, but if for some reason we are unable to, Franklin and Pooja will follow up individually on those. In case you have any difficulties with audio and visual today, the best way is just to restart the webinar presentation, and that should resolve any issues. Before we get started, we'd like to do a quick poll here. So just 1 second, and you should see the questions popping up on the screen. Please, can we request for everyone to participate in the polls? We have another question. All right, looks like everyone has just about wrapped up with the answers, and I will now share the results. Okay, so we are interested to know how you primarily prepare and distribute your board materials. And for example, do you stick strictly to just paper packs? And just based on the results, the majority of you are on paper with a split between email, internal file hosting, and also third-party secure board portals. Let me share the next results of the second poll. And of course, majority of you have shared that there's a concern element with regards to information on a board portal. And the good news is our goal for the session, right, is to provide you with an overview of what a board portal is, some of the key benefits and features, and how going digital will make your life a little easier and more productive. And again, we welcome your questions. So please remember, you can ask that at any point in time by using the question panel in the GoToWebinar panel. With that, I now pass over the floor to Franklin.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Franklin, and I'm the Regional Sales Director for Asia. So today what I want to present to everyone is really just kind of like it's a board portal one-on-one. It talks about the basics of a board portal and where it really came from. So first, I just want to share with everyone a little bit about the evolution of the board portal. So if we go back in time to say about 15 or even 20 years ago, you know, where most of the delivery of the board meeting materials are via courier. So, you know, we would actually print the paper meeting packs and we would courier it to the directors. Life was fairly simple at that time in terms of, for all you corporate secretaries out there, really the control of these meeting papers was absolutely in your hands, because the normal practice was director receiving their paper packs, they would scribble on it, make their annotations, and then they would bring it into the meeting room. When they leave the boardroom, they would actually leave those paper meeting packs on the table for you to shred. But as time evolves with all the introduction of new technology, so for example, for the mobile devices that we currently have, I'm pretty sure that, you know, for most board members, they are using one or two or more devices. For example, they may have a computer in their hands. You know, when they travel, they may be using a tablet or their mobile phone. And then you have all these different technologies in terms of emails, Gmails, Yahoo. Essentially, what that has done, it has created a nightmare in terms of corporate governance. because what we found in the poll that we just did, a lot of you are actually emailing out your board meeting papers. What actually that means is as soon as it reaches the hands of the directors, the control of those board meeting papers are no longer in your hands. They are free to print it out when they want. They can forward those board meeting papers to another personal email account like a Gmail. And all this in today's cybersecurity world has really presented a risk in terms of data leakage of sensitive materials for the company. So that's how the whole industry came about, with the ambition of trying to secure your organization's most sensitive information in a secure communication and collaboration tool specifically designed for board members and senior executives. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about your daily routines. So every day when we come to board meeting times, usually we have the requirement to send these board meeting paper out 7 days in advance. The challenges for most administrators like yourself is that usually some of the information, they come in pretty late. And when we finally receive all this information, we are really pressed against time to perhaps PDF it, and then send it out either via email or print out a hard copy and then send it out to the directors. What makes life more frustrating is that leading up to the board meeting itself, there most likely will be changes in the board meeting paper. And what that means for you is really to go back, re-PDF or repaginate everything into a big PDF file, and then have it to deliver it to the board members again. From the board members' perspective, what they find is it's a really cumbersome tool that they have to go through multiple emails just to look for a specific version or the most up-to-date version of the meeting paper. Sometimes they don't have a good internet connection, so the download is really, really slow, and they just don't have that instant access of the board meeting paper. So essentially what a board portal should do is to provide a secure communication and collaboration tool for these board members and senior executives. It should be very, very easy for them to use. It should be very easy for the administrators, so you, the COSAC, to compile those paper and deliver it to the board members. And with that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, wrap up before I go into the demo and talk a little bit about Diligent. So we started this business in 2001, and throughout the last 16 years, we've accumulated across the globe, over 4,700 companies with 140,000 users currently. Now, these include some of the world's most prestigious companies, as well as security-conscious companies like financial institutions, organizations in the energy industry, government entities, and listed companies of all sorts. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my iPad using a tool called AirPlay to show you what a simple and secure board communication tool should be like. So I have now logged in to my iPad, and I have already logged into Diligent Boards. What I'm presented as a board member really is a bookshelf where I see the proper meeting groups that I belong to. So in this case, I belong to the board of directors. I am a member of the audit committee, and I'm also a member of the nomination committee. Now for Diligent Corp, there is an investment committee and a risk committee as well. But because I do not belong to that meeting group, I actually do not see the information that I'm not privileged to. So let me just expand the board of directors there. There you see I'm actually presented with 2 board meetings. So there is a new board meeting paper that is ready for me. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to tap on the book and sync it to my device. Now, one of the unique things about Diligent Boards is we have clients in over 75 countries across the world. And in some locations, the infrastructure is not as good as the other. So we might be hindered by, for example, a poor internet connection, or if we are traveling remotely, we don't have a really high-speed internet connection. So what Diligent Board does is it's allow for the syncing to be done in the background. So this is very different from when we are reading a file from a traditional email or even a internal file sharing solution like Dropbox or Google Drive. So I'm just going to tap onto the agenda here, and it takes me to the first page of my board meeting. Normally, we would all start off with the agenda. So I can just scroll down here, and I can swipe from right to left to move between the pages. So essentially what I'm doing now is I am going through the pages of my board meeting material page by page. What I can also do is to bring up my navigation panel, where on the left-hand side, it will show the different tab dividers that is involved for this board meeting paper. So starting off from the first tab, the agenda, I now have tab 1, the approval of minutes. And with this, what I can do is based on the personal preference of each individual directors, they can read information that is most relevant to them. So for example, I may be one who likes to focus on the operational aspects of my organization. So I can instantly jump to the executive management and CEO presentation, where it takes me directly to the chief executive report. Now on this report, you will see that there are annotations there already. These were annotations that are made while I was in my office using a PC. Now, because I'm currently traveling and I have my iPad with me, all of these annotations are synchronized to my iPad as well. What that means for a director is that I no longer have to worry about having multiple copies of the same board meeting paper around. I'm always working with one single copy of this board meeting paper with all the latest information, as well as all my annotations up to date and presented in front of me. Okay? The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to the committee report. And here, what I will also do is I will bring out my annotation tools. Now, Diligent Boards, having worked with 140,000 different users, both from a corporate company secretary perspective, as well as a board member perspective, we have incorporated the most useful tools that they will use on a daily basis. Because the last thing that we want to do for board members is to overcomplicate a solution with 100 different tools, of which 99 of them they will not use. So for example, here, I can bookmark my page by flipping down the top right-hand corner. I can bring out my highlighter, where I can use the stylus or my finger to highlight different sections of this page. I can bring out my pen, where here, using a stylus or finger again, I can come in here and do some very, very fine annotations with my paper. And then last but not least, I can bring up my sticky note and where I can type messages. Now, as I mentioned, a secure board portal, not only should it actually provide most up-to-date information for the board members, it should also be a tool that enhances collaboration and communication between the board members. So what Diligent Board has done is to allow the ability for board members to share their comments either with the entire meeting group or with a specific user. So for example, if I have a question that I want to discuss with the chairman as well as the CEO for the upcoming board meeting, all I have to do is simply to check out their name. And what this little sticky note becomes now is it becomes a conversation where everybody can provide their input. So now what the system is doing is it's helping all the board members and senior executives to collaborate with each other. So going into a board meeting, what I will now do is I will bring up my navigation panel again. Instead of looking at the tab dividers at this time, what I will do is I will bring up all my annotations. So everything that I want to talk about for the board meeting is sitting there on the left-hand side. And you will see that on page 135, I actually have a conversation where I am discussing a certain internal topic with one of my colleagues, and we have responded to each other. Okay? So let me just jump back out to the main bookshelf here. On the second board meeting paper there, you see what we have provided in terms of a solution is also a tool that you would use very commonly when you want board members to pass a resolution. So here, inside Diligent Board, what we have provided is a voting tool where I can state specific documents, for example, a resolution that I can pass on to the directors. And after they have gone through the resolution, what they can do is they can vote on this specific resolution. And once they agree or say yes to a vote, what we do is we put their electronic signature onto the document along with a timestamp so that no matter where they are, resolutions can be as effectively passed. Okay? Now, I also want to introduce a little bit more about this Diligent Board solution in terms of the other sections. Diligent Board essentially is divided into 6 sections. The current place that you're looking at is what we call current books. It is a place where you store current and upcoming board information. What this means for the users is that anything or any board meeting paper that's placed under this section, board members and senior executives will have access to that either with or without an internet connection. Now, of course, sometimes they also have to reference back to previous board meeting materials. So that's why we have created a specific section called Archetype Books for you to place past meeting materials in. And what we have also provided is a powerful keyword search capability, which I can come in here and I will type in the word annual report. And now what Diligent Board will do is it will look through the entire system for any past meeting papers that has the keyword annual report in. So I can click on one of these results and it will show me a preview of that paper with those keywords highlighted. The next section that I will show is a resource center. Oftentimes, besides the board meeting paper itself, we need to provide a lot of information to board members. For example, sometimes we need to present audited financial reports for them to review. There might be reference materials in relation to a merger and acquisition. There could be corporate governance policies, training materials, press releases, all of which can be placed inside of Diligent Boards in a secure fashion for board members and senior executives to access anytime. Other sections includes a full contact card, a fully functional calendar, as well as a powerful questionnaire tool where company will leverage to do their annual board evaluation or peer assessment, or if you are an organization that is listed in the United States, to help you with what we call a director and officer survey. So that essentially is diligent boards from the user perspective. It's a very, very simple and powerful tool for board members and senior executives. Now, so how do we get all these information inside to diligent boards and deliver it to the board members? The process has to be very, very simple. So what I will do now at this stage is I will switch back to my PC and log into the administrator's interface. Now, while I'm logging in, I want to talk about currently what most corporate company secretaries go through in their daily work in terms of distributing board meeting materials to the board members. So sitting on my desktop is a folder where I have placed a lot of information. So for example, I have there an agenda and an approval of minutes that I have created. Now, all the other information essentially does not come from the corporate secretary division. It actually comes from other departments. So for example, the COO will present you with an operation report. That's probably in Word format or a PowerPoint presentation. In this case, my CFO has presented to me a CFO's presentation in PowerPoint format, and number two, a budget report that is sitting in Excel. And of course, I would have the chief executive do the same thing, of which they would present to me a Word document as well as a presentation file as well. Now, normally at this stage, once we have gathered all these relevant files, what we would do is we would place them all into one single folder. And for the purpose of what we're traditionally used to, either, for example, whether we are printing these documents out or whether we're emailing these documents, what we normally do is we would put all these files into a zip file, or we would go through a tedious process of turning it into one large single PDF. Now, Diligent actually understands that this is what normally goes on with company secretaries in their daily routine. So we have made the process of sending these informations to the board members very, very simple. So right now, what I will do is I will create inside a Diligent board a new meeting for an upcoming board meeting. So I will create a board meeting paper from scratch. It will ask me for some basic information. So let's say the board meeting is happening next Wednesday on July the 26th. And I will fill in a name, so Acme Q3 board meeting. And now what happens is all that is required for your action is to take this folder with all the single files and individual files in there and just drag it into Diligent boards. And instantly I am presented with a panel where I can provide a tab divider for each single file. And I can ask the system to order my board meeting papers numerically. So I'm presented with a structure starting off with the agenda, and then the approval of minutes, and the rest of the information that is tabulated accordingly. And now what happens is I will ask the system to help me encrypt all the documents that I have just imported into Diligent boards and present it to the director. So what the system now is doing is going through a conversion process of both encrypting the documents and convert it into one single meeting paper for all the board members to view. Of course, a lot of times we get the question from company secretary where, well, after my upload, well, can I actually change or edit the way that my board meeting paper is presented? And the answer is, of course, yes. So for example, here under the operations report, for a board meeting, sometimes we do not want these file names or the tab dividers to be abbreviated. So what I will do now is I will come in here and simply just change the title to Operation Process Report. And that gets changed instantly. I can also drag and drop to reorder the agenda items in my board meeting materials. So for example, if I want to present this operations report right before the health and safety update, I can simply drag that up. And what you will see is all the numbers will automatically be adjusted. I can change the agenda item here. Instead of calling it tab 1, I would like to call it agenda. So I can have the system to name it as a non-numbered tab. So now the naming convention becomes an agenda. Another big challenge for company secretary in today's business world is to ensure that whatever they present to the board members are correct. So what we have provided inside Diligent Boards is a preview. This preview gives a function of what you see is what the board members get. So underneath here, the way that it is presented right now in front of you, you can be sure that it is essentially exactly what the board members will be looking at. There will be no change in terms of the page numbering. There will be no change in terms of the font. Everything will remain constant so that you do not have to worry about each board members having to look at a different copy of the board meeting paper. And once I have previewed my document, I can come in here and I can say to the system that I have previewed it, and I can approve it so that this is ready for board members. And once I have approved this board meeting paper, it is a simple process for me to come in here to book status and just send it off to the individual directors. So as you can see, it is a very, very simple process for you to manage your board meeting paper. We have streamlined what you do on a day-to-day basis, and we have allowed for a tool that is easy for the board members to use, and it streamlines the process of uploading board meeting materials and the delivery of the board meeting materials. So with that, it concludes the end of my presentation today, as well as a demo of Diligent Boards. I would now like to open the floor to any questions.
So thank you, Franklin. Thanks for sharing the overview of and going to the features of the board portal. So let's just take a minute to answer some questions. I can see one coming in. The first one, Franklin. Can I use the board portal to deliver resolutions for directors to sign?
Yes, absolutely. So during my demo, you actually saw that I had a voting document, or what we call a resolution, that is embedded inside the board meeting paper itself. Now, these resolutions can be also delivered individually to board members for them to vote on, and board members would easily have access to it via their computer, their iPads, or even on their mobile phones.
Thank you for that. The next one is, what happens to directors' annotations if there are any last-minute changes?
Yeah, that is a very, very good question, Stephanie. In fact, Diligent Boards is very conscious that directors will make annotations, and every time when company secretaries does last-minute changes, the system itself ensures that all director annotations are kept in its appropriate places and never lost. Because from a technology perspective, the last thing that we want to do is to create confusion for the directors. So always from Diligent Board, we always help the directors keep their annotations, even when there is a last-minute change to the board paper.
Okay, thank you for that. I have another one this is from a latecomer, or late joiner. If I decide to use this technology or adopt it, how long does implementation take on the average?
So usually it takes about 4 to 6 weeks for the implementation. Now, the way that Diligent Boards does its implementation, as I saw earlier in the poll, a lot of the respondents or the attendees, they're concerned that the directors will not use the technology. So one thing that Diligent does is we provide very, very customized implementation schedules, where number one, we provide unlimited training, as well as one-on-one training for the directors. Because we understand that the dynamics of each board members are very, very different. Some may be more tech savvy than the other. So we want to make sure that we are able to meet up with them one-on-one and teach them the most easy way for them to access their board meeting material and to ensure that they're comfortable with the technology. This, at the end, will really help the adoption and help the directors transition from paper to a electronic board portal.
Great. I have actually a couple of more questions. We have a very enthusiastic audience today. So this is from another gentleman. This is, does the portal cater for digital signing back of BOD documents, for example, meeting minutes? And the second part of this question is, how does the portal secure the digital signature?
Okay, so the signature inside Diligent Boards is actually an electronic signature. So it's a little bit different from what we traditionally know as a digital signature. However, in our research of the different jurisdictions, for most countries, electronic signatures are accepted by law in terms of board meeting materials. So whether it's board meeting minutes, whether it's resolutions, in most countries, it is accepted.
Thank you for that.
The second part of that question is that how do we help organizations secure their board portals? So what we provide in terms of an infrastructure is for each single Diligent client, we provide them with their own unique database, as well as their own unique master encryption key to make sure that, number one, these information are not accessible to the outside world. And number two, information for individual organizations and companies are always kept segregated from both from other companies as well. I'm happy to actually follow up that question on a more detailed basis. As usually what we do in our prospects evaluation of the board portal, we have a very standard process of going through a security due diligence with individual organizations.
Great. One final question before we wrap up. Are board papers and files shared to all directors and blocked or one by one? If en bloc, how do I exclude any one board paper from being viewed by any one director?
Okay, so first, to start off, the board paper are only shared with privileged board member or privileged personnel. So for example, while you have a board of 10 board members, your audit committee will only have 5 individuals. So when a meeting paper is shared with the audit committee, it only goes to those 5 privileged recipients. The system can also further tailor and restrict access of specific parts, whether it's one single file or one single tab or the entire board meeting paper for a specific individual if there is a case where there is a conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you for that, Franklin. Everyone on the webinar, just being conscious of time, we will now have to wrap up. For questions we have yet to respond to, we will get back to you individually. So once again, thank you for joining the call today. For current clients who need additional information, please contact your customer success managers. And for prospective clients out there that are looking for more information, please certainly be in touch with Franklin Chen for Asia or Pooja for India. Or again, reach out via email. And just before you leave, please do take 20 seconds to fill out a brief survey because your feedback is really of importance to us. And this will be available once the session is closed. And the replay will be available shortly. And with that, on behalf of Team Asia, we wish everyone a fabulous day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.